You know, when you think about spiritual orders, wisecracking probably isn't the first word that comes to mind. But for the Bektashis, it's kind of their whole deal. Today, we're getting into Bektashism, the order of the Witty Dervish.
Huh. I mean, that's not just some clever comeback, right? That little line tells you almost everything you need to know about the Bektashi philosophy. It's sharp, it's a little bit rebellious, and it's definitely not a fan of rigid rules. And that wit, it's not just for laughs. It's actually the key to unlocking who these people were and how they managed to operate.
So that witty, almost indifferent attitude, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How on earth did a group that seemed to be poking fun at strict religious law end up becoming the official spiritual guides for the Janissaries? You know, the Sultan's most elite, most feared soldiers in the entire Ottoman Empire. That's the big puzzle we're going to piece together today.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we've got to start with the person, the personality at the very core of the order. Let's really dig into what it means to be a Bektashi type.
So this whole Bektashi type thing, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. All that famous wit, the clever mockery, it all sprouted from the central idea of broad tolerance. Think about it. When you're not locked into super strict rules, you suddenly have all this room to breathe, intellectually speaking. For the Bektashis, questioning authority wasn't something to be afraid of. Heck, it was celebrated. It was seen as a sign that you were really thinking, that you were truly intelligent.
All right, so where did this super unique, tolerant culture even come from? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at the recipe, the spiritual ingredients that got mixed together to create Bektashism. And let me tell you, it's a really complex blend, with flavors from all over Anatolia and even further. The big idea here has a fancy name, syncretism, but all it really means is blending different beliefs, sometimes ones that seem to totally contradict each other, into something brand new. And Bektashism is a perfect example. They weren't just borrowing a little from here and a little from there. No, they were actively weaving all these different threads together to create their own unique spiritual tapestry.
And check this out, this really shows you all the ingredients in that recipe. You've got a base of ancient pre-Islamic Turkic beliefs. We're talking shamanism, fire cults, that kind of thing. Then you stir in some influence from other wandering kind of anti-establishment Sufi groups. Add a big dose of Shia Islam, especially their deep respect for the 12 Imams. Then, for some spice, you mix in mystical beliefs like Harufism, which was all about the hidden meanings of letters. And you top it all off with local folk beliefs from the Balkans and Anatolia. What you end up with is this incredible cosmopolitan spiritual stew.
And if you want a perfect, concrete example of how this works, just look at this core Bektashi principle. Be master of your hand, your tongue, and your loins. Now that might sound like just some general moral advice, but get this, it's almost a word-for-word parallel to the 3 seals from Manichaeism, a super old pre-Islamic religion. It's just a fantastic example of how Bektashiism could grab an idea from its diverse past and make it totally its own.
Okay, so we've got this wild mix of beliefs and this culture of witty humor. That's all great, but how do you actually turn that vibe into a powerful, organized institution that can survive for centuries? Well, for that, you need an architect.
And that architect's name was Balem Sultan. Now, you might have heard of Haji Bektashi Veli as the original inspiration, but Balem Sultan is known as the Piri Sani, which literally means the second founder. Why? Because he's the guy who took all those raw materials of Bektashism and actually built the organization that we recognize today.
He basically rolled out 4 huge reforms that created the order's modern foundation. First, he centralized everything, setting up a single headquarters to oversee all the lodges. Second, he created a clear hierarchy, a leadership structure. Third, he systematized their core beliefs and rituals, giving them a solid framework. And number 4, and listen up, because this one is the move that changed everything. He brought back and reinforced the idea of celibacy for a key group of the dervishes.
And here's the twist. In trying to make the order more disciplined and organized, that one reform, celibacy, ended up splitting the Bektashi house right down the middle. And it wasn't just some small disagreement. It created a massive conflict that has literally lasted for more than 500 years.
So this split created 2 main factions. On one side, you've got the Chalebular, which you can think of as the Sons of the Loin. Their whole claim to authority is based on bloodline. They believe the original founder, Haji Bektash, was married, and they see themselves as his direct physical descendants. Then on the other side, you have the Babalar, or the Sons of the Path. They're the ones who followed Balem Sultan's celibate path. For them, true authority isn't about blood. It's spiritual. It's something you earn through merit and devotion.
And I want to be super clear here. This wasn't just some old-school theological debate that fizzled out.
This core conflict over what makes a leader legitimate, is it bloodline or is it the spiritual path, that's still the central division within Bektashism today.
All right, let's circle back to that other huge question we started with. We've got a pretty good handle on who the Bektashis were, but how did they get so incredibly powerful? Well, the answer lies in a fascinating alliance, an alliance of sword and spirit. Look, this source of Bektashi power wasn't just their witty philosophy. It was this. They had a formal, official partnership with the Janissaries. We're talking about the Sultan's personal army, the most feared and respected fighting force in the entire Ottoman Empire. And that connection, it gave the Bektashis protection, it gave them influence, and it gave them a level of prestige that was just off the charts.
This timeline really lays out the whole dramatic story of this alliance. It all starts back in the 14th century, when the Janissaries first start picking up on Bektashi traditions. By the 15th century, it's not just an association, it's an official merger. They even had a Bektashi Baba, or father, stationed permanently in their barracks as a spiritual guide. For centuries, their fates were completely locked together, which is why in 1826, when Sultan Mahmud II decided the Janissaries were too powerful and had to go, he destroyed them. And because they were inseparable, the Bektashi order was outlawed right along with them. They rose together, and man, they fell together.
Wow. So after all that, centuries of wit, of blending beliefs, of internal division, and immense power, what's the takeaway? What's the real legacy of this pretty remarkable order? Let's tie it all together.
When you boil it all down, Bektashism's legacy is really about all these pieces fitting together. You've got this syncretic faith, right, born from a real melting pot of ideas. That, in turn, created this amazing culture of tolerance and intellectual wit. Then, Balam's Sultan came along and gave it a solid formal structure, a structure that was immediately defined by that deep internal fight over who should lead. And finally, you can't understand their story, their rise, or their fall without understanding their shared destiny with the Ottoman Empire's greatest soldiers.
And all of this really leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. That central conflict that tore the Bektashis apart, the fight between bloodline and merit, that's not just their story, is it? It's a universal question. It forces us all to ask something that goes way beyond any single order or empire. Is true authority something you inherit, or is it something you have to earn?